You're listening to the Journey Podcast. What if the aftermath of toxic abuse held the potential for transformation? Stay tuned for an inspiring story in today's episode. This episode contains adult subject matter, and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we delve into the profound journey of reclaiming your power and authenticity after experiencing toxic abuse. Our discussion centers around the process of healing and regaining a sense of empowerment and authenticity in the aftermath of challenging relationships or abuse. Our conversation uncovers the transformative potential of this journey, highlighting steps you can take to rebuild your sense of self, restore trust, and nurture inner strength. We explore the significance of self-compassion as an integral component of this healing process. Our guest will shed light on the path towards regaining power and embracing authenticity, and provide valuable insights and tools to navigate the aftermath of toxic abuse, ultimately guiding you towards a renewed sense of self-worth, resilience, and a brighter future. Tiffany Ghrist's passion and purpose align with helping people in all areas of life. As a recovering lost soul and toxic abuse survivor, she gets it. She is there to help her clients get out of their head and into action, no matter what that looks like for them. She wants everyone to know that the world is waiting for them, just like it was for her. It was not until Tiffany made one single choice to change what her life looked like, and that first step started with giving herself permission to matter and the need to find out who she was, why, and how she was going to reinvent her life by changing her story one day at a time. Let's meet Tiffany Ghrist. Hi, Tiffany. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because reclaiming power and authenticity after toxic abuse is such an important space for holistic healing. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Petra. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have our conversation today.
Yeah, I think it's such an important topic, and I'm so glad that you came on the show today. And do you want to start by sharing a little bit about yourself and your story and how you came to do what you do today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an alignment and authenticity coach, and I tend to lean more towards helping women that have been in a toxic relationship, toxic environment, be that workplace, childhood, relationships, platonic, whatever their experiences are. And I stepped into this space because of my own journey when it came to healing from, growing up in a toxic environment as a child. My mother is a narcissist. I then replicated that in my adult life and continued to attract individuals that had similar traits and tendencies as far as the level of toxicity goes, just because that's all that I knew, right? And sometimes I feel that you get comfortable with the things that other people would be uncomfortable with, just because it's what you know. You already know what to expect. You're not going to be disappointed. It doesn't mean it's good for you, but it's just what you know. And I started my journey through healing a couple of years ago. I was in a toxic relationship that actually went from a romantic relationship into a business relationship, and just tying literally every aspect of my life into that situation was very daunting on me. It was extremely exhausting. And I came from a place where I wasn't able to have a voice. I was constantly being challenged and questioned about the effort that I was putting in. I mean, just a little backstory on that. It was a remodeling business, and I literally did everything behind the scenes, getting the leads, doing the invoices and things like that. And my business partner was kind of the face, he ran the crews and stuff. So we had equal parts because we're both good at different things. So you'd think it makes sense, but just constantly being challenged, financially threatened because of worth, things like that, was just really, really taxing on me. And again, I allowed that situation in my life because it's what I knew. If I didn't get attention as a child, if I wasn't challenged, if I wasn't, pushed, or if there wasn't conflict, I guess, for lack of better terms, then that meant that there wasn't passion, or there wasn't, a level of care and value as far as my place in someone else's life. And just being the chronic people pleaser and perfectionist that I was really started to take its toll on me, because I fell into that codependency, again, opening up all aspects of my life to someone who is hungry for control. Was not smart on my part in hindsight, but at the same time, there's that moment where you wake up and you look around and you're like, holy crap, like, how did I get here? How is this my life? So I branched away from that. I literally took the risk and let go of everything and focused on myself, and a lot of trial and error, a lot of self-talk and going back and forth, like, wait, this is not what we do. And then the new version of me kind of speaking up and saying, no, we need to figure out who you are without all these people, how you want your life to look, how you want your story to, be read from here moving forward. And just having gone through all the trials and tribulations and this method and this book and this coach and this, YouTube video. I mean, there's so many things out there that, super, super helpful. But having been that, people pleasing perfectionist, I tried to do things by the book, so to speak. And it was very difficult because certain modalities just didn't work for me. And being on my healing journey, I really took that to mean something about me. Everybody else is successful doing this XYZ, step-by-step method, but why am I not successful? And then having to fight that inner voice of, well, maybe it's because you don't deserve to be happy. Maybe this isn't possible for you. And to put everything kind of into perspective, I know that there's other people out there that are on this journey, that are in a relationship that brings them down and just drains them of their self-identity and their worth, that try to break free, but it's so much easier to fall back into the known toxicity, or are, starting their journey, and it's incredibly lonely. So with my empathic and intuitive abilities paired with my personal experiences in life, for me to be able to really reach out and touch individuals in a place where, there's a lot of relatability when it comes to me and my clients, and to really hold space for them in the place that they are, no matter where it is on their journey, and tap into who they are, because I can see past who they are right now, and I can really see into who they're meant to be, and to really start to help individualize that journey for them, as opposed to hoping that we can fit square pegs into round holes and just creating more stress and challenges for ourselves, but to really allow them to branch out and figure out what works for them, to know that they have that support, that they don't have to have that victim mentality, and that it is okay to not be okay. So that's really what started me on this journey, just knowing how lonely and difficult and challenging it is once you make that big decision to, cut things out of your life that no longer serve you and decide that it's your time to shine.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you've taken some really brave steps. I imagine it takes actually quite a lot of strength and courage to make the decisions that you have made. And when you talk about your experience, I also notice that when you speak about toxic relationships, it's not just about personal relationships. So this could affect also relationships at work or friendships, which some people might think if this happens at work, it's just part of the power dynamic, but really it could be a very toxic relationship. So how can people know when they're in toxic relationships, if they think it's maybe just normal what they're experiencing?
I'm just going to throw it out there. And unless you know, you know what it means, it's going to be kind of hard to wrap your head around, but I'll elaborate a little bit. It all comes down to, we all have that gut instinct. We all do have our own intuition. We've silenced that voice a lot through societal norms and, again, people pleasing and things like that. But if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And you're right. I mean, especially in the workplace environments, I actually do have a client that is working with me now because, a narcissistic boss that she had just made her feel so small that she literally just lost control of all aspects of her life. She ended up quitting, but now she's still finding herself having to pick up the pieces. So you're right with that power dynamic. Sometimes we, as a society just say, okay, well, so-and-so is over me. I'm inferior. They're superior. Well, that's an awful mentality to have, but that's also reality, right? But to know that it is okay to be assertive, and being assertive isn't always aggressive, right? You can still be respectful to someone that, has a higher rank than you, so to speak, but your ability to have that feeling within you that's like, you know what, I don't appreciate being talked to like this. I don't feel valued. Being able to formulate that, that method of communication, I guess, as far as expressing yourself is okay. It's not a matter of should you or shouldn't you do it. It's more of a focus of how do you do it. But when you come from broken places, even before that, you just kind of accept that as the norm. And that's really what I'm setting out to do, is to reconnect people with that intuition and to realize, no, I am valuable. I am worth it. There's not anyone in this world, no matter how much money they make, what their background is, how they impact your life directly or indirectly. No one deserves to be treated like that. And it's okay to stand in your power respectfully. And once you find the willingness first and ability to do so, you're creating a life of ease and flow and freedom for yourself. And you really feel that empowerment. You don't have that victim mentality. You don't have the, thoughts of being small. You're comfortable in your own power, sharing your voice, being seen, being heard. And at the end of the day, the more that you can realize that by embracing that concept, you're actually commanding more respect from other people around you, because you're showing that you respect yourself. So those kind of people are going to start falling off, and you're going to be able to recognize those red flags sooner than later. And instead of, bending and twisting and accepting it as acceptable, you're going to be able to catch it early and either cut it out of your life or adjust how you react and respond to it accordingly.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And thank you for breaking that down. And I'm really curious about, when and how did you decide to make a change in your relationships? Because I feel like it's a very difficult thing to A, become aware of, and B, decide to change. And many, many women especially never actually get to that point of making the change. So how did you decide that? What point did you reach where you said, you know what, I need to make some changes here?
I'm going to use my experience with my upbringing and my childhood to answer that question. This is something that people don't talk about. I actually went no contact with my mother in 2019, I believe. And that was a difficult decision for me. But again, my mom is a narcissist, and she would be the kind of person that would like to create situations where she could play victim and then ask for help, and you'd come in and help her, and you were never good enough. Nothing's ever going to happen for her. Nothing's going to change. And you're just beating your head up against a wall. And I had friends, and even, being in the romantic relationship I was in at the time, continue to encourage me like, well, that's your mom, it is what it is, and accept her in your life, and you got to be there for her, and she's this and that. And for me, it just got to the point where everything, like when you grow up in situations like this, you develop this cognitive empathy where you're always trying to get in front of things as a trauma response to be prepared for what's going to happen. And okay, if I do this, then they could react this way. If I do this, like, you just want to keep the peace with individuals like that, but they're insatiable. No matter what you try to do, no matter how far in front of it or how considerate and compassionate and empathetic and understanding that you are of them, or no matter how much you base this situation on previous interactions with individuals like that, you're never going to win. It came to a point with me that I was just completely exhausted, and I did pull back a little bit and did a lot of self-reflection and worked on forgiveness when it came to her. And it sounds so harsh, but sometimes you just have to find pity for others that just want to be miserable. It's so hard to say, especially about a parent, but when we're talking about full-blown narcissism, I mean, there's literally parts in their brain that do not function because it's a survival mechanism that our bodies do. So certain things you're not going to be able to change with people. And my moment for me was my son was graduating high school and I was still trying with her. And she actually moved down here to Texas just to be with me. She was asking how we were going to get out to the place where my son was graduating. And I told her that it was going to be me, my son, and my ex driving. And she decided she didn't want to ride with us. So she never showed up at the graduation. And that was the final straw for me because I continued to try. I continued to give her grace, look past the, BS for lack of better terms, allow her into my life, especially those, special moments, despite how she made me feel on a day-to-day basis, allow her to be a part of her grandchild's life. And when she, showed me for the last time that she was more self-absorbed and things like that, that she wasn't interested. I mean, she was just more focused on her wants and needs, and she was accepting and embracing the opportunities that I continued to give her to be in my life. And for me, that was it. That just showed me no matter what amount of effort, care, concern that I have for her, nothing will ever change. And it was just better for my son and I to no longer have contact and communication.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that so honestly, because I think it's important for listeners to hear that and to hear some of the steps that may need to be taken for you to be able to heal and set those boundaries that can help you later. It also sounds like when you're speaking about your experience that sometimes friends and family, even though they might be well-meaning or they might be trying to keep the peace, aren't very helpful when it comes to leaving a toxic situation or when it comes to setting some boundaries. And do you have any experiences like that? And does that happen to your clients as well?
I do have those experiences, not anymore though, I will say, because I have put myself and given myself the opportunity to really focus inward and not take those opinions or guidance with too much weight, so to speak. But yeah, especially, culturally, my ex at the time, he's very family oriented. When you get older, you take care of your elder parents and all of that. And wrapping his head around how that's your mom. How can you not do that? My course of action as far as that went was, and mind you, this ex was also just like her. So it was kind of like, well, wait a minute. But my course of action with that was kind of to just, I took it to heart, right? Because it's, like you said, it's so hard to cut out friends and family. You think you're always supposed to have them in your life because they're your friends and family, right? But mine was more exposing him to how things really were. Yes, I understand that she's important, this, that, and the other thing. She raised me, all of the things we think about our parents, but she's not good for me. As an adult, this is not something that I can tolerate. With friends and family, I will say that in my experiences, and I've shared two, on this conversation here, I've had plenty of experiences, unfortunately, and fortunately. 9 times out of 10, I will say, rather than people coming in and intervening or sharing an opinion about your situation, people that you do care about and that are good for you are going to start falling out of your life because it's so hard to, as a victim of abuse, you justify and you make excuses because, again, with that level of empathy, you can see, oh, he said this, but he really meant this. And sometimes you're twisting it in your brain to make yourself feel better. So at first, when those red flags start to come up in any kind of relationship and the outsiders want to step in and they want to be a support for you. As an abused individual, you tend to push them away because you're making excuses, and it's painful for them to watch. So they will remove themselves from your life more so because you're kind of putting them in the same situation. I'm trying to be here. I'm trying to care. I'm trying to do the right thing, but you're pushing me away. It's the same thing that would happen when you're an empath and you're trying to help or fix or whatever, someone with narcissistic tendencies. It's just not going to happen and you're never going to do it. So I would say that the majority of the time you're actually isolating yourself because it's so hard to know that someone that you care so deeply about is going through this, but they're actually making the choice to do that, especially for an outsider that hasn't been through a situation like this and they can't understand. I was a strong, independent, successful career woman, single mom my whole life. Like I had everything going for me. And then I met this man and he literally stripped me of everything that I was. And for people that were in my life, that have been in my life for a long time and love me and were always on my side, to watch that happen, you are going to get, those opinions more about yourself. How could you let this happen? How, I don't understand why you put up with this. This isn't you, but not understanding the cycle of abuse where it's slowly, slowly, slowly chipping away at you until, like I said, that one moment where you're like, how the heck did this happen? Who am I? That's what I would say is really, the majority of what those experiences are from the outside world. You lose the good ones.
Yeah, and that's why it's so isolating, I would imagine, because as you're struggling with all of this, you realize that people have stepped away and have left your life, and you are sort of left to your own devices to try and figure that out. So I can see how that's very isolating and lonely, having to figure that out by yourself then, or with very little support. So as a coach, how do you approach situations like that when you start working with clients? Like, where do you begin unraveling these situations and then helping your clients?
It really is a personalized experience with everyone. Again, like it depends on where they are in their journey and what their actual experience was that got them to the point to get tired of, I always say tired of your own BS, tired of putting up with stuff and saying, hey, this is all I deserve. I don't deserve any better. So it really is an individualized, personalized situation. But I would say from a high level, it all starts with, how they got to where they are, where they were before that. There is a lot of, in the process, grieving your old self because, I used to be like this, or old Tiffany was, like I even just said, successful, this and that and the other thing. And man, I used to be like that. How did I let this happen? So creating space for them to grieve that the person that they were that did, quote unquote, allow for this to happen. And then really laying out those things that were a part of who they were in the core in the past that they want to dust off and see again moving forward, but also really helping them embrace the fact that things happen for them and not to them. Really changing that victim mentality into, what, if this hadn't happened to you, you probably wouldn't have given yourself the opportunity to work with someone like me and really, really branch out to who you're supposed to be and not the person that you thought you needed to be or the person you had to become in order to please people and keep the peace. So it's really about sharing, again, who they were, the experiences that they had during the, toxic exposure, how they feel now, what their goals and hopes and dreams are, what gets in their way, how they talk to themselves currently, and giving themselves grace and forgiveness to the person that put them in this situation, kind of closing that door and understanding this wasn't your fault. This is just how they were, and that's something that they need to work on. Right now, we need to focus on you, and then mapping out, the plan as it aligns week to week on our calls for what are your goals and how are we going to work towards this, and talking about the whys. I'm really big on that piece of it, the accountability, because if you're going to tell me that you want to accomplish something or feel a certain way, and, we talk about it, put something together, I want you to ask yourself 5 different times why this is important. because that's really what's going to start changing that mindset, really put you into action and helping you realize that you do have power and you can commit to yourself and you are able to pick up the pieces and rebuild them with more of a solid foundation than you've ever had before.
Wow. Yeah, I love how unique and individualized your help is. You really pick people up from where they are and work with them to where they'd like to be. That sounds wonderful. Now, in your experiences that you have lived through, is there anything that would have helped you make these decisions earlier, or anything that would have supported you better on your journey if you had received that from the people around you, from the people looking from the outside? And I'm kind of wondering, some of the listeners might have family members or friends who they can tell they're in a toxic relationship, but they can't really say anything because that person, like you said, is choosing to go through that experience. But is there anything that you would say that, oh, if they had done that, that would have helped me, or if they would have done this, that would have helped me? Or is there not really anything that family members can do in those situations?
That, Petra, is a really, really good question. Thank you for asking that question. And my answer to that is there is not anything anybody on the outside could have done for me. And I would say for the majority of, people that I've worked with and people in my, communities and things like that, that have been through experiences like this, it's probably best described as almost having an addiction, to drugs or alcohol or smoking or whatever your vice is, that if you want to make that change, you have to realize the damage that it's doing to your body, to your life, to your mental, emotional, physical, financial well-being, no matter what it is, and really say, you know what, I want better for myself in order to make that change. Because again, the cycle of abuse is very methodical. It's very progressive, but it's slow moving. Like, you don't know what hit you until, it's never too late. Well, yeah, sometimes it's too late, but until, you have that aha moment and you're like, holy crap, So I tie the experience close to an addiction because you do somewhere inside of you know your value, your power, your influence on people, and all you want is the best for someone else. And when you're looking at your abuser and you're seeing them for who they really are on the inside, as opposed to who they are showing you that they really are in reality, you always are waking up thinking, maybe today will be different. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe today's the day that they're going to understand where I'm coming from. Maybe today's the day that they're going to have some compassion or, love me the way that I deserve to be loved. And you almost become addicted to chasing. It's a trauma bond. You're chasing that what if, because you have so much faith in yourself, but you're utilizing those gifts that you have on someone that is never going to see them. So I would say it's really not anything on the outside. You really have to have that aha moment and hold on to that feeling long enough to not continue to go back, because it won't be different. You can cut ties with someone and 2 weeks later, they're going to be the nicest person ever and love bomb you all over again. And you're going to be like, oh, maybe he's changed. Well, I'm going to give this another chance. And you can't, because that's how the cycle goes. So it's hard. It's really hard to find yourself in that moment. And you have to realize too, when that moment hits you, the change is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be hard. It's going to be lonely. It's going to be a lot of trial and error. It's going to be more painful than experiencing the abuse, because you're kind of having to sit back and force yourself to look back into, how did this happen? Who do I want to be? And seeing how far it stems back, it's hard because, like me in my 40s, like, holy cow, my whole life has been like this, and feeling like you're starting over so late in life, it's hard not to beat yourself up, but it's so worth it. And to have the right support when you do have that moment moving forward, that's when it's time to bring in those external influences, because you have to be ready. right? If you want to quit smoking and your whole family's like, I want you around for a longer time, I wish you'd quit smoking, you're not going to until you want to. You can try and try and try, but it's not going to work until you've actually made that decision. And then you call in the troops and say, okay, I need you to hold me accountable moving forward. And that's the time to rally everybody in and really hold on to those external influences that you have.
Yeah. And I imagine there's a lot of different factors also. For some people, that might be financial considerations or fear over their children being taken away and all sorts of things that go into these decisions. And how do you work with people? Let's talk a little bit about your programs and services, because I want to make sure that listeners get a sense of the support that is out there for them and the resources that are available for them if they do come to that decision and they would like to explore leaving a toxic situation. How could they work with you and what can you help them with?
Sure. I do put a lot of my focus, because the personalized and individualized attention and, roadmaps are so important to me. I put a lot of focus into my one-on-one coaching. I do have 6 and 12-month packages available for that. I also have a podcast, and I am open to having anybody who would like to share their story join me. There's going to be a little coaching on there, but it's very empowering to share your story because, as I said, you feel like you're the only one going through these things. So if anybody's willing to share that with other people and help empower them, I welcome that. I am in the process of writing a book, and I do have a Facebook group that I welcome, anybody that's listening to join. It's called Reclaiming Me. Embracing toxicity after narcissistic, or embracing or empowerment after toxic abuse. So those are the things that I'm working on. I'm going to be putting some courses together and stuff, but really right now my focus is to be able to do that hand holding with my clients on my one-on-one calls.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So thank you for sharing that. And as Tiffany said, she also has her own podcast called Sassy and Self-Employed by Intuitive Introspection. And you can listen in from your favorite podcast provider. Check out some of the episodes that she has done. And like she said, and get a feel for if you'd like to share your story with her on there. And we will be linking to all of Tiffany's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there for how you can get a hold of her and how you can connect with her if you'd like to work with her. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed this journey into empowering and inspiring others to reclaim power and authenticity after toxic abuse. I think this is such an important topic to talk about, and thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom and your personal experience that you have on this topic with us today, Tiffany. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it has been my pleasure. And I hope that our listeners have gotten a lot of good ideas out of this episode and ways to move forward and also begin their own healing journey. So yeah, thanks again, Tiffany, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.